what you can to care about other people. Do what you can to care about other people, and you will indeed make this world a better place. Those words of our visionary founder, Mrs. Rosalind Carter, echo throughout this hall today. She is calling to us even now, you all, and challenging us, giving us a higher calling to continue to do good in this world. Welcome everyone to the 32nd annual Hall of Fame induction ceremony of the Georgia Women of Achievement. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Oh, this is such a special year. For those of you who have been with us before, raise your hand. How many times do I say, oh, this is the most special year that we've ever had? But it is. It just keeps getting better. We're going to honor some amazing Hall of Fame inductees today, great leaders who you will find formed the foundation of this very organization. So who are we and who am I? Well, I'm Penny Elkins. I get the great pleasure of serving as the president of Georgia Women of Achievement. This is our voluntary service, and you're going to meet some of my colleagues who do this on a voluntary basis. I have to say it's really selfish of us to do it, though, because it's such a passion project. We are inspired that we get to do this work, in addition to our wonderfully full lives of full-time employment, which we all have, and I want you to know that. If you are on the Board of Trustees of Georgia Women of Achievement, would you please rise? All of you around? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Y'all, this is a mighty army of people who are committed to the Georgia Women of Achievement mission to tell these powerful stories of women of our past, those trailblazers in Georgia history, such that hopefully all of us in this room, men and women, and including all of those in the future, especially these young people that you're going to meet today, will in fact be inspired to do something, says Mrs. Carter, to make this world a better place. Your presence today in the middle of very busy and involved schedules. I just saw, where's my friend Christy Kovac, who's doing major construction, by the way, at Mercer University, where I serve as executive vice president of the university. And I said, Cindy, are we going to get that construction project done? You know, which we will, by the way. But we all know that we are in very busy worlds. So let's just pause. Let's pause today together to be inspired by the voices that we will hear of these women who are represented in this room in a myriad of different ways. Thank you all for giving us the gift of joining us today. There are a lot of people that we have to thank, you all, and one of whom happens to be the leader of Wesleyan College, who is president of Wesleyan, and that is President Megan Blight. Y'all, we've had a very long-standing relationship with Wesleyan. It makes great sense that the organization, the home of Georgia Women of Achievement, is here on this sacred land. And Megan is leading that and doing a fantastic job. Each year, I want you all to know that Wesleyan College supports us by allowing us to be on their campus, allowing us during this beautiful time, this March season, which is cherry blossom in Macon, but also a very special Women's History Month, that she and her staff have been incredibly gracious to allow us to have this ceremony, today on this beautiful campus. So Megan, would you please come bring us greetings from Wesleyan?
Thank you, Penny, and good morning and welcome to the 2024 Georgia Women of Achievement induction ceremony. I'm Megan Blight. I am the very proud president of Wesleyan College, and it is an honor for us to host this ceremony. It's only fitting that this ceremony is hosted at Wesleyan College. We are the first college in the world chartered to grant degrees to women, and that is uniquely Macon's history and uniquely Georgia's history, and so this makes so much sense for us. Wesleyan College has been accelerating equality for women since 1836, and this is a legacy that I am so proud of. And as we head into our next phase of history, we will continue to advance the achievements of women. Since 1992, Georgia Women of Achievement has been honoring outstanding women who've made contributions to all aspects of our society. What's important to me is that the young women on our campus see themselves on a path to achieving this designation themselves someday. Today, you'll hear about one of our very own graduates, Valeria Murphy, along with 3 other incredible women. I'm so excited to hear all of their amazing stories and honor them on this special day. We salute the friends and families of all of our honorees, and we welcome all of you to Wesleyan. Thank you.
Thank you, President Blight. Okay, well, let's jump into the program, and we're going to proceed as is printed in your order of ceremonies. I want you to know that we're focusing today, for those of you who have been with us in the past, we are leaning in to our mission to educate these young folks who are going to, both men and women, who will in fact be those change makers of the future. So with that, I would like to introduce another member of our Board of Trustees and my very, very good friend, Cindy Busby, who serves as Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff of Atrium Health. Cindy's going to tell you a lot more about that educational mission. Cindy?
Good morning. Through our founder's original intent, our education mission began and continues here. Our charge was to seek, curate, and preserve all the vibrant histories of the Georgia women and all their amazing disciplines. Many of those you will see today. The GWA Education Mission is proud to have continued their work this year in 2023. We hosted many inaugural projects and programs, all befitting the women who will be honored. Our important 2024 education program included the design and development and website posting of our first Georgia Standard Aligned Women's Studies curricula for elementary, middle, and high school. That was due in part to the tremendous work of Dr. Fletcher Johnson and the Bibb County educators who helped us achieve that goal. It's now available on our website for all educators across the nation to access. It also included the creation of new connections with the Georgia Department of Education. Those professionals helped us align with many of our statewide goals and planning, especially in the area of women's history. We also celebrated our first inaugural exciting presentation at the University of Georgia for the 2023 Georgia Council on Social Studies. We presented to a room full of educators who were very excited to see about the resources we had, and many of whom committed to supporting our efforts in the future. One of our most fulfilling projects was, while working with many of our devoted Mercer students, improving our website. We had gotten feedback to improve the functionality and the access, and now we're focusing more on the world-class videos and archives that are available. Lastly, for 2025, we are now planning more events and engagement for the students who access our materials. Many of those will include storytelling, art projects, and the ability for those communities to submit their own Women of Achievement for us to recognize. All in all, it was a great year for Georgia Women of Achievement and our educational mission. And as our mission inspires us, we are continuing to look for opportunities to educate Georgia's youth by raising awareness about these outstanding female role models. For that reason, we are thrilled to welcome and sponsor Heather Wills and the students from Loganville Middle School in Walton County to today's events. Students and Ms. Wills, would you please stand? Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Valerie Clark, retired educator and former state representative.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Rosalind Carter visited the Alabama Women's Hall of Fame, and she was so taken by her event there that she came back and spoke to other women about this event. And she spoke to, in Columbus, Georgia, she spoke to the gracious ladies of Georgia. This event was so inspiring to them that they invited her to a luncheon right here on the Wesleyan campus. And one of the go-getters in that group was Nancy Anderson, who's here today, right there. And Neva Fickling, Mrs. Sam Nunn, Robert Ackerman, Frank Jones, and Valeria Murphy, as you spoke of just a little earlier. And this was the beginning of the hard work to create an organization that would keep history alive for Georgians. That's Georgia Women of Achievement. As an aside, Wesleyan provided all the food, all the refreshments, but they looked around, and Valeria Murphy went home and got all of her own table accoutrements and decorated because they wanted everything to be perfect for the former First Lady. The first GWA induction ceremony was in 1992, and among others, they recognized Martha Berry of Berry College. They recognized Juliet Gordon Lowe, the Girl Scouts. They recognized Flannery O'Connor, famous Georgia author. And since then, more than 100 of our women have been honored from arts, humanities, business, education, government and politics, science and health, and sports. The significance of the Hall of Fame is that it honors extraordinary women of Georgia and keeps their contributions alive for generations to come. Each year, we receive nominations from individuals, from family members, organizations around the state who wish to honor female trailblazers as Georgia Women of Achievement. Our organization entrusts a selection committee, a group independent of GWA, to recommend our inductees to the board. These individuals share their expertise and love of history year after year with us. They represent some of the state's finest historical institutions and approach their responsibilities to this organization with the utmost care, the utmost professionalism, and passion. Would the members of the Board of Selections please rise? And also, any past members, would you all rise at this time as well? Thank you so much. Consistent with Mrs. Carter's vision, it now gives me great pleasure to invite you to hear the stories of 4 women who will be inducted today into the Georgia Women of Achievement Hall of Fame. And thank you, Stella Williams-Bailey. She is also a civic leader and a volunteer and a coach for others. Thank you, Stella, for introducing our first inductee.
Thank you, Valerie. Good morning, and thank you for pausing today to celebrate the achievements of the 2024 inductees. We begin with the philanthropist and Atlanta's first fundraising consultant, Beatrice B. Hirsch-Hass. Let's listen to her voice as we hear her story.
Bea was born in 1905, so turn of the century, into a German-Jewish family in Atlanta who had been here maybe 2 or 3 generations at that point already, but she grew up in a fairly well-to-do household. She went to college at Wellesley, probably when she was 16 or 17. It was not uncommon for people that go to college earlier than we do these days. She came back here, and I think she had got engaged, and then within a couple of years later married my grandfather, who was 25 years older than she. And he was from another prominent German-Jewish Atlanta family. My dad said when they got married, it sort of brought 2 leading families together.
In In 1927, Bee married civil rights attorney Leonard Haas, and together they raised 2 children. Bee became active in the League of Women Voters during the 1930s, serving as president of both the Atlanta and Georgia Leagues and treasurer of the National League in 1946. In 1954, Bee co-founded Atlanta's first fundraising firm, Grizzard and Haas.
I didn't know a woman who had her own firm who started the first consultancy like this, certainly in the Southeast. I don't know how that compares nationally. I always felt that I was sitting at the feet of the master.
So I met Bee when I just turned 20 years old. I was going into my junior year of college. And I was hired to be, I think my title was office clerk, which was a glorified title for what I did. I made photocopies and ran packages around downtown Atlanta. But when I came back after some work experience, she treated me like a professional colleague and not like the 19, 20-year-old kid she had known.
Through her work at Grizzard and Haas and the firms that followed, Bee had the perfect platform for transforming her experience in community service and civic activism into a successful business.
I came to work, and I think it was the very first day that I met Bee. So I was very young at the time. Everybody else in the firm, except the principals, called her Miss Haas. Miss Haas, Miss Haas, Miss Haas. And I had to deal with her because I was the graphic designer, and I had to go and say, what do you want me to do for this case statement, et cetera. And I thought, well, I can call her Miss Haas, or I can call her like my principals do, Bee. And if she wants me to call her Miss Haas, she'll correct me. And if she doesn't, she won't. I started calling her Bee, and she never corrected me.
From 1954 until 1997, Bee served tirelessly as both volunteer and professional consultant, working with civic, business, and community leaders on fundraising campaigns across the state.
And saw the need and didn't turn her head or her eyes or her heart, and found ways to open up her heart and her hands and her feet to do the work that needed to be done.
And she would be able to stand, I'm thinking about it for myself, tall and straight, toe-to-toe with every executive in this community. Everyone did what Bee said. She's the one that developed the pyramid of fundraising, that you wanted the top of the pyramid to be the people that could give the $1 million gifts, the 6-figure gifts. And then you would have 2 in a couple of other categories until you finally got to that broader campaign. And she was amazing at both strategy, but also the managing the details, from her shoebox to Grand Dame.
When she started at No, there were no other women. I mean, there were no other women doing much of anything, not less be the CEO of their own fundraising consulting firm that worked with CEOs of modern industry. I like to think that she started the whole industry because she mentored so many people, male and female, but she taught us that yeah, it's possible. We can do it.
In our conference room, we actually have a sheet that has about, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25 of the Bee-isms on there, the things that she would say over and over again. The one that I use all the time with clients to this very day is, if you want to have a $10 million campaign, strategy A is find somebody to give you $10 million. Everything else is a backup plan.
I can certainly tie it back directly to some perspective or practice of hers that she imbued in me and many others. We used to say that much of the Georgia development world either learned directly from her or from people who learned at the feet of her. That's how long she was in this. And of course, the nonprofit sector in the 40s and 50s was nowhere near the size it is now.
As Georgia saw explosive growth in the nonprofit community, Bee and her firm were well positioned to support that growth and did so with professionalism and grace. Among the long list of clients throughout her career were the Atlanta History Center, the Atlanta Botanical Garden, the Historic Savannah Foundation, the United Negro College Fund, and the YMCA.
The thing that she did to me that was the most incredible, she was an advocate first for hospice and then for AIDS. And when it got really scary, when people were very sick and dying at home, it was intimidating. And some donors and volunteers didn't want to give anymore or participate anymore. And she said, but we will, because I know they're mothers. And so we did. We had an in-home care program. We partnered with Aid Atlanta. We raised a lot more money.
It was passion, commitment, obligation, problem solving. How do we advance the organization? And, the Girl Scouts was there, League of Women Voters, but not just those. The High Museum, the Woodruff Arts Center, Forward Arts, the Tech Georgia joint fundraising campaign that started really with her assistance.
She was trendsetting. In a lot of ways, I believe she was ahead of her time. I became very familiar with Bee during my time as president of the Association for Fundraising Professionals of Greater Atlanta. So in 2019, I was president. And with our organization, we actually have a Bee Haas Lifetime Achievement Awards and recognizing some of the most influential professionals in the field of philanthropy and community that have given their lifetime in service.
The good news for me is that many people still remember Bee Haas. And even if you don't remember her or you didn't know her, those who are in the field highly respect and remember her and will tell stories, the Bee-isms, all the stories about Bee, what they learned from Bee, what they're passing on from Bee. So that's what's going to live. That's the legacy, because we're still doing the Bee-isms.
In 1988, Bee directed a major capital campaign for the Girl Scouts of Northwest Georgia. It was the first capital campaign in the region to be led by all-female leadership.
Bee came to the office every day up until 3 or 4 days before she died. She was coming to the office. My wife and I dropped off some work papers and a get well card at the hospital for her the day before she passed away. She wanted to see some materials for a campaign she was working on.
Bee continued working with clients and directing major capital campaigns into her 90s. In 1997, she died after a short illness at the age of 92.
The night before she passed away, she said, "You better get your dad down here." So he got down here pretty fast, and we were at the hospital. The night she passed away, she was conscious right up until the last few hours, but she's on her deathbed fretting about some issues going on.
I think if you ask Linnell, he'll tell you she went out on her terms. She planned her memorial service herself. She was in control until the very end.
She didn't coddle anybody, but you got all of her attention. She was interested in you. She wanted to know all about you. She exposed me to Atlanta, and she made me care about it so much more because I saw how she cared about it.
And I think so many people really are not just deeply appreciative, but had great affection for Bee because of who she was, what she did, and then how she served the community, because she loved Atlanta. She loved Atlanta.
It's almost hard to conceive of how different a time it was. She was a widow with children and grandchildren. She was supporting herself. She was creating her own business. She was doing the things we're doing now, taking risks in many ways, because she was such a trailblazer, because she was the first.
Video about an inspiring woman. Will the family, friends, and guests representing Beatrice B. Hirsch Haas please stand and be recognized? Thank you. Bee was nominated by Betsy H. Verner, and accepting today her award is her grandson, Linnell Haas. If you would join me at this podium, please. Go right ahead. And now I would like to invite Dr. Adrienne Epps to the podium to introduce our next honoree.
Good morning. You can do better than that. Good morning. I love that energy. It is my pleasure and ask you to hear the voice of an educator, Adela Hunt Logan. Please hear her voice.
Adela Hunt Logan was born February 10, 1863, in Sparta, Hancock County, Georgia. She was the daughter of Henry Alexander Hunt Sr., a planter and Confederate captain, and Maria Hunt, a free woman of Cherokee and African ancestry.
She was daughter of a Confederate officer, a white man in Sparta, Georgia, and a woman who was free, part black and part Native American. She was very fortunate in that even though her white father did not socially connect with the family, live with the family, he took care of the family, and he made it his goal to make sure that all of his children had access to education.
Adela attended Bass Academy, a private school for black children in Sparta. She earned a scholarship to attend Atlanta University, where she entered the normal education program. She undertook additional coursework in New York and earned an honorary doctorate from Atlanta University in 1903.
Her life story was very interesting. Her connection back to Georgia, we shared some things in common. She attended Atlanta University. My master's is from Clark Atlanta University.
I became interested in Adela Hunt Logan through working with my students. They encountered the work of Adela Hunt Logan. I'd never heard of her. Never heard of her.
I first came across Adela Hunt Logan when I was curating a museum exhibit for the University of Georgia Special Collections on the history of convict labor in Georgia. And in that article, it was obviously about suffrage, African American women gaining the right to vote, but it was also about her speaking against mass incarceration of African Americans.
This was a challenging time. After the Reconstruction, many of the protections that African American Southerners like Adela had vaporized, and life became more precarious. But even so, African American communities, particularly in the South, thrived. They sent students like Adela Logan to university.
Adela Hunt Logan, she wasn't alone in writing about suffrage, about mass incarceration, equal rights, education. She was joined by a host of other African American women at this time, like Mary Church Terrell, Anna Julia Cooper, Ida B. Wells, who were all campaigning to secure equal rights and the privileges, the protections of citizenship.
In 1883, Adela turned down an opportunity to teach at her alma mater and accepted Booker T. Washington's invitation to join the all-black faculty at Tuskegee Institute. There she served in various capacities, including instructor of English and social sciences, interim principal, and debate team coach. She organized the school's library and served as its first librarian.
I was drawn to her work as a librarian, but I was also struck by the fact that her name seemed to be missing from discussions about the suffrage movement and even among black women suffragists. And I thought it was really interesting that she was right here from Miller, Georgia, but very few people knew about her life and her work.
Well, her connection with Tuskegee and, it amazes me that this is a small place. It's just 8,500 people in the entire county. It amazes me how people from this county did so well.
At Tuskegee, Adela met and married her husband, Warren Logan, who served as the school's treasurer. Although she lived in Alabama, Adela was a frequent visitor to Georgia, where she joined black women including Janie Porter Barrett, Selena Sloan Butler, and Lucy Craft Laney to work on issues of concern to the black community.
She goes to Tuskegee to teach, and she's in Alabama, but she never forgot her home state. She came back to rural areas like Milledgeville and Augusta to teach in the Peabody Institutes. She taught spelling and grammar. And the story of Middle Georgia, especially African-American history, cultural productions in Middle Georgia, has really been neglected.
And so I think maybe that's why she hasn't received a lot of attention. I think something else that has caused her maybe not to receive the kind of attention that she should have is that
that she was different from a lot of suffragists of her era, even black women. At a time when, some of her contemporaries, she was one of the initial members of Tuskegee Women's Club. They were working on reform issues and other things, and she was concerned with the vote.
Adela attended and spoke frequently at meetings of the National Association of Colored Women, where she delivered speeches and campaigned for more literature to be published on women's suffrage.
Adela Hunt Logan was publishing in national newspapers that had a very wide audience. The Colored American Magazine, the NAACP's The Crisis, and those were national newspapers. But even on a local level, a lot of African American farmers and white farmers as well were reading Tuskegee's newspapers that she was publishing in.
And she understood that she needed to be able to use different modes of communication in order to be persuasive and compelling and to disseminate her ideas to these different audiences. And that, I think, is a still unacknowledged part of her genius, a still unacknowledged part of her legacy.
She was very, very strategic about what she was doing. She would often write up under a pseudonym to sort of mask her identity. So she would use her initials rather than her name to talk about the activities of black women suffragists and black women's clubs.
Adela Hunt Logan worked tirelessly within the limitations imposed by her race and sex to advance the causes of education and suffrage for black women. She strategically used the platform that was available to her, writing, to bring the issue of black women's suffrage into the national consciousness.
And she used it to advance her message and to get into some spaces where she may not have been able to gain access if she identified as a black woman. And so I think her methods that she used are very admirable and just really, really inspirational.
She was able to speak to people across all different walks of life, more renowned people who were on the lecture stage in places like Washington, but also the local citizen, the everyday farmer, the gardener.
One reason we should honor Adela Hunt Logan is because as a daughter of Georgia and as an African American daughter of Georgia, she reminds us that at the core of African American culture has been the desire to learn and the understanding that education is key.
George Washington Carver's dedication for the How to Grow the Tomato and 115 Ways to Prepare It for the Table was published in 1918 after her death. George Washington Carver says, "To my esteemed friend and co-worker, Mrs. Adela Hunt Logan, who was tireless in her efforts to help the farmer and his family, and who saw in the tomato a panacea for many of his ills." Taking something as seemingly small as a tomato, but it meant so much, right? Because it provided sustenance, it provided health, it provided economic prosperity and community. Oh, when the saints.
Adela Logan passed away 50 years before black women would be guaranteed the right to vote through the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
She was a champion not only of her own people, but also of American society, the good that America could do. And for that, we need to recognize her because even though she was from a tiny town in Georgia, she understood that it didn't matter where she was from, that she could make a difference, not only in terms of this state, but also in terms of the nation and the world.
Well, she has ties back to Hancock County. Anything that has ties back to Hancock County is pretty special for me, and I think this is amazing that she's getting this award.
I've been following her and learning more about her over the past 15 years or so, and as I've done that, my perspective has really changed and my admiration for her has only grown.
I know we need to honor her as a Georgia woman of achievement, not only for her emphasis on education, but on her understanding that to be ambitious as a woman is okay.
How inspiring. For the family members, friends, and guests, and I would dare to say any educators in the room, please stand in recognition of Ms. Hunt Logan. Thank you. You know, educators shape the world and shape all professions, so definitely applaud all the educators. Would Dr. Sandra P. Walker please join me on the stage to receive the plaque and nomination? Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Lisa White to come to the podium to introduce the next inductee for today's ceremony.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. It's always such an exciting event, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce the video for Mrs. Valeria McCullough Murphy, a great Macon civic leader and a former trustee of Wesleyan College. Please listen for her voice.
I like to say that she was in a time when women, they were expected to volunteer, but they weren't expected to volunteer the way Valeria did. She was a mover and a shaker kind of volunteer. She didn't make waves. She made the tide come in. She was in charge. And everybody knew it. I mean, people had great respect for the kinds of input that she had.
She attended North Fulton High School in Atlanta, but she never graduated. Her sister graduated, who was a year older, and went to Mrs. Semple School for Girls in New York on the Upper East Side. And it had been a really well-known finishing school for girls since the 1920s. My mother was so miserable because her sister had left that she never graduated from high school. She left school and went straight to Mrs. Semple's in New York. And apparently it was quite a deal. Later, I guess 1989, she was given an honorary PhD from Wesleyan, and she loved that. That's not bad for a girl who didn't actually graduate from high school.
Valeria Rankin McCullough was from a prominent Atlanta family. She graduated from Wesleyan Conservatory summa cum laude with a degree in art in 1948 and married into a prominent Macon family 4 days later.
My parents had a wonderful relationship, and I lived in a household where they never raised their voice. My father was such a gentleman of the old Southern school. My mother was at Wesleyan when she met him, and he was 12, 13 years older. Some people thought that was a problem at the time. My mother's father sent her a letter and said, "What are you doing marrying this older man?"
It was not long before Valeria joined the Junior League, among other groups, and despite her social pedigree, she was not a typical volunteer. In 1957, the Junior League adopted the Macon Youth Museum as a project, which quickly became Valeria's special interest.
Valeria's contributions to the museum's growth were really significant in getting the museum from where it started in the early 50s to where it is now. It opened in 1956 as the Macon Youth Museum in a single rented room at the former Wesleyan College building. And an early partnership that was pretty instrumental in the growth of the museum was with the Junior League of Macon.
We worked together in the Junior League, which was the way I met her, which was probably the first major organization that I was involved in. Then the Middle Georgia Historical Society, the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation, the Museum of Arts and Sciences, the Red Cross.
Always supportive of her alma mater, Valeria was named to Wesleyan's Board of Trustees in 1980. She was charged with heading the search committee for a new president and created an elaborate structure that invited input from multiple arenas.
So she set up the most gargantuan structure. It took a lot of time, and she must have spent hundreds of hours doing it. The Board of Trustees had a search committee. Then each of the constituencies of Wesleyan had their own subcommittee. So the Board of Associates had a subcommittee, the faculty had a subcommittee, the student body had a subcommittee. There were like 5 subcommittees that all reported to the trustees committee.
When Valeria was invited to join Wesleyan College's Board of Trustees in 1981, the board, of course, was composed mostly of men. She quickly impressed members with her intuitive management skills and was even asked to chair the Presidential Search Committee.
She was the one who had to do the hard work to get it done. And then, of course, she became a fundraiser for Wesleyan and then the first female chair of the Board of Trustees, which was way overdue.
And then obviously her involvement with Wesleyan has increased her profile a lot. I was on the Wesleyan board for about 6 years. It was just so much fun to talk to people that knew her and were associated with her through the college.
In 1988, Valeria hosted a luncheon for former First Lady Rosalind Carter to discuss forming a Hall of Fame to honor Georgia women. The small committee met numerous times over the next few years to create the organization now known as the Georgia Women of Achievement.
I think it was in 1988, she called one day and said that she and Neva Fickling had been to a meeting where Rosalind Carter talked about needing a Women's Hall of Fame for Georgia. And they thought immediately, Valeria was so creative. She could think of how things could be done and how they would be successful. So she immediately thought, a Women's Hall of Fame, shouldn't it be involved with the first college in the world chartered to grant degrees to women? The famous women who are connected with Georgia, like Joanne Woodward and Colleen Nunn was one of the people. Of course, Mrs. Carter was the first, most important honorary trustee. Valeria didn't live to see the first induction ceremony.
If Valeria were to see the museum today, I don't think that she would be surprised. I think that she would just be so tickled and proud that we realized the vision that she set out. I imagine she had a pretty good idea where the museum was going and probably imagined things that we still don't know yet.
She loved to drive fast, and her license tag was her initials, which was Valeria Rankin McCullough Murphy, so VRMM. But everyone in town said it stood for vroom, which was how fast she liked to drive. And one of her things was when she was on her way to Atlanta, she would put on her cruise control as soon as she got on I-75, and her goal was not to have to tap the brake until she could get off at the off-ramp in Atlanta. You just needed to get over if she was behind you, because she wasn't going to tap her brake.
I have been really involved in the civic side of Macon, Georgia, since I moved here in 1970. And she is the one who raised my awareness of our responsibility as citizens to become involved and do stuff that helps the community. So, I mean, I've done that. And she is the one who instilled that value in me.
And she got a lot of honors while she was still living. She was a gracious lady of Georgia, and she was a Woman of the Year for several other organizations. So she got quite a bit of recognition during her lifetime, and I think that's good. You know, I think there are a lot of people who never know how much they were appreciated, and I think my mother did know that she was loved and that she was appreciated and that people realized that she had made a difference in her community.
Clearly, this lady stands out as one of Wesleyan College's exceptional alumni, one who spent her adult life as a trailblazer for women and who promoted equality for women throughout her lifetime. She opened doors across the community and has moved the needle forward for so many of us today. Thank you, Valeria.
Family, friends, and guests representing Valeria McCullough Murphy, please stand. I'd like to welcome her nominator, Nancy Anderson, to the podium, along with her daughter, Val Murphy, and nephew, Lee Murphy, to join us and receive the plate we present to the nominator, Nancy Anderson, and one of our great founders. I'd like now to invite Velvet Perry to come to the podium and introduce the final video. Velvet is the Vice President and General Manager of Perry Broadcasting in Augusta. Velvet.
Good morning. Now let's reflect on the co-founder of Tift College Library System and philanthropist Betsy Willingham Tift. Here's her voice.
Bessie Willingham was born June 30th, 1860 in Allendale, South Carolina. Her family moved to Albany, Georgia, where she attended school. Bessie started higher education at Wesleyan College and transferred to Monroe Female College in Forsyth, Georgia, graduating in 1878.
She came from a very large family. There were 15 or 16 of those children, and her uncle had an equal number of children. So the Willinghams constitute a very, very large family. Her father was a fairly wealthy farmer as she grew up in Dougherty County, and evidently did quite well.
I was about 16, I think, when she died. So I had a chance to see her, but only when I went to Tifton. We spent every Christmas with her, and I remember dreading, I thought, oh gosh, we gotta go to Tifton for Christmas. But it wasn't because of her. She was always sweet.
One of the problems I've had in looking at her life is finding more about her mother. Of course, mother was busy with that many children, I'm sure. But her mother was also active, not only in things such as the fairs that they had in Albany, but she was extremely active in the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the temperance movement. And I'm sure that had an impact upon her daughter, who later became active in the movement.
In 1885, Bessie Willingham married Henry Tift, a wealthy businessman and founder of Tifton, Georgia.
Her husband asked her to marry him, and she was a good bit younger than he was, and she said, well, you're too old, and you don't go to church. And he said, well, the age doesn't matter, and I'll go to church with you. He said, unless I'm sick.
And so the story goes that once the wedding was over, Henry was sick almost every Sunday. But that just could be a tale, because no matter what she wanted to donate to or help, he was willing to open his wallet.
That doesn't surprise me. She was a very religious person, okay? And I don't think Captain Tiff, he was more of a get the job done, visionary, big picture, make Tifton a better place, and brought churches in here, I guess mainly because this was a pretty rough crowd.
When Bessie Tift saw a need, she not only volunteered her money, but gave of herself.
The reason the school was named Bessie Tift College was because the school faced a dire future. In 1905, Bessie Tift and her husband was at a Georgia Baptist convention, and Dr. Charles Haddon Spurgeon Jackson went to the podium at that meeting. He said, I'm going to plead with the Georgia Baptist Convention for my school. And he said we need $37,000 because of enrollment. They could not keep up with the growth of Monroe Female College.
She loved helping people. She saw a need and she met it. And that was what happened with the college. She ended up giving the money so the school could stay open, and that was just amazing, and that's changed so many lives to have that girls' college to stay open.
She wrote a note to the moderator of the Georgia Baptist Convention and said, Henry and I will donate the $37,000. That note was sent and read to the Georgia Baptist Convention, and that literally saved Monroe Female College from going bankrupt.
I'm told, and this sounds like odd, but he said, now Bessie, when we go tonight to this function, you be sure and sit on your hands, because apparently everywhere they went, they were always raising money. and my grandfather was the one who had the money.
So 2 years later, the trustees of the school voted to rename the school Bessie Tift College, not only because she saved them from bankruptcy, but she and her husband gave over $125,000 at least to the school. In the early 1900s, that would be about $4 million today.
But she was there at a critical time, and she answered what seems to be the call for a hero. And she was that to this college.
Tift College was special to all the alumni. We love the traditions. We love the passing down the traditions. A girls' school is special. You don't have the competition of the males there. And I think it's needed for some girls like us that needed that leadership. But we built each other up, and we helped each other.
She graduated in 1879, and she certainly was a Tift girl, even though that wasn't what it was called at the time, but she was an example to the rest of the women that have graduated from there.
The traditions at Tift is what really keeps us all together now, because we gather as a group. We're the traveling Tift cutie pies. And we didn't go to school that year they were there, but it didn't matter because we'll always be a Tift girl.
Bessie Tift served as a life director of the General Federation of Women's Club, an organization currently impacting communities all over the state with 75 local clubs.
Bessie would be pleased if she could see the things that the Women's Club is still doing today. Not only are we still advancing the rights of children, we are helping with domestic violence issues.
We work with the library. We read books for their story hours sometimes. We try to always donate books and have books available everywhere we can donate, because that's where we started and that's how we want to continue on.
And one of our main projects, and I know that Bessie would love this, is our veterans.
The Georgia Federation of Women's Club helped establish the Tallulah Falls School, a school that still operates today. In 1910, Bessie Tift proposed the building of a cottage to house students and faculty at the school.
And they announced that they needed to build a dorm or housing for the young ladies, because if they attended school, they had to walk in because they didn't have vehicles or buggies. I visualize Bessie Tift sitting there saying, they want to build a building. I can help them build a building. And they did. The Tifts shipped a load of part pine lumber to Tallulah Falls School for this cottage.
When Tift College merged with Mercer University in 1986, Mercer and the Tift College Alumni Association joined together to form a historic partnership to preserve the legacy of Tift College. Over the years, Mercer honored its commitment to maintain the heritage, identity, and ideals of Tift College, most notably through the Tift College Scholars Association. The association annually awards one 4-year full scholarship through the Bessie Willingham Tift Scholarship.
Mercer University has a scholarship program, and we've had one of those young ladies speak to our alumni group, and she was awesome. And she didn't know a lot about Bessie Tift, so we've all learned a lot.
She was a person who filled a unique need when it arose, and she was able to have the foresight to realize what a splendid place this could be.
The first Bessie Willingham Tift Scholarship was awarded in 1998, which gives us a total of 25 Bessie Tift Scholarship recipients.
Well, I'd never heard of Tifton when we moved here. I grew up in Atlanta. But once you move here, and of course being a Tift descendant, you hear about Captain Tift and Bessie Tift all the time, and their names are all over the place, and it's all good things.
I have the great honor of serving as the mayor of Tifton, Tifton's first female mayor, and I really draw a lot of inspiration from many women, but she's one of them because I think she was sort of a trailblazer in her day.
I took the state of Georgia map and I put it on social media, on the alumni pages of Tift. And I asked if you did any service, if you did any volunteer work, if you taught, if you served in any way, in a county, I want you to let me know the county. 153 out of 159 counties are where TIF ladies have had impact.
I was expecting a baby, my first baby, and so I wanted to name it for my grandmother. And I said, Daddy, her name was Elizabeth, wasn't it? And he said, no, her name was Bessie. I said, I can't name a child Bessie. It sounds like a gal to me.
I think it's important to each of us, wherever we live, to engage in our community and to know our community and to do what we can to be an inspiration to other people and to try to make our communities better.
With the family, friends, and guests representing Betsy Willingham Tift, including the Dean of the Tift College of Education of Mercer University, and any former Tift alumni in the room, please stand. Thank you. Now, with Dr. Letty J. Watford, please join us on stage.
Yes, and also Betsy's granddaughter, Catherine Porter, is here. We're glad to have you, brother. What a great day. The attendance, the honorees, the videos. And first, let me express appreciation to the officers and members of both boards, past and present, for their support for Georgia Women of Achievement. And to again thank past presidents Nancy Anderson and Eleanor Lane and the other people who Valerie mentioned who worked with our founder for the creation of GWA. And also, I want to acknowledge and thank Penny and Megan and say that the strong and solid support and cooperation of Mercer and Wesleyan in recent years has taken Georgia Women of Achievement to a higher and stronger level. So we appreciate that. And Melissa Montgomery is here. Where are you? Melissa, stand. Melissa was a special assistant to Rosalind Carter, working with her at the Carter Center and in Plains, and came with her 2 years ago when Rosalind made one additional appearance after several earlier ones and spoke at the luncheon. And Melissa and Stella tell me that was the last public speaking appearance that she made. It was great to have her at that time. So, Rosalind Carter, the name speaks for itself, very loud and clear, and is an inspiration around the world. Human rights, women's rights, health care improvements, mental health awareness, the Center for Caregivers, the Butterfly Trails, Maranatha Baptist Church, Habitat for Humanity, the Carter Center and Museum. Her strong work and partnership with Jimmy Carter in state, national, and international matters. She was the very first First Lady to attend cabinet meetings and was an active participant with President Jimmy Carter in the United States government. And we are here today and every March because of the vision and the action of Rosalind Carter in creating and founding Georgia Women of Achievement. And all of this and much more she did with love, grace, and humility. With the help from Jill Stuckey and others, Penny Elkins and Tina Calhoun have a special video to honor and remember Rosalind Carter. Marvelous. What a great lady whose legacy will continue forever. Carla Heath Sands is well known in Macon from her time with WMAZ TV and as a popular anchor with WALB TV in Albany. We're pleased to have on the GWA Board of Trustees and to have her today for a musical tribute.
I don't know about you, but you could hear Rosalind's voice throughout that video. And we can also hear her voice today requesting that there be peace on earth. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let's all pay tribute to Rosalind Carter. Please join me. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father. Brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Thank you.
I told you, didn't I? I always know how incredibly special these ceremonies are, and today has certainly topped the list of all of them. As the members of our Board of Trustees, they don't know this, so I always like to throw something on them. So if you all would come up and line up behind me, please, as we conclude this ceremony today. Tina Calhoun, would you please join us as well? Y'all, this is an honor for us to get to do this. It is a lot of work, and as a matter of fact, on stage, please, thank you. They were saying to me this morning, yes, ma'am, whatever you say, because you know what? They are so committed to this work. I hope you heard that all of these, the vast majority of these folks who serve on our board are fully employed in other organizations. Yet we take the time to do this good work because we believe in this good work. We believe in sharing these voices that you heard today. As I'm looking around this audience and I'm thinking to you as the students from Loganville Middle, to Mrs. Tift Porter, who said, Porter Tift, who says, you know, here she sits, and Dr. Catherine Futrell, here they sit in, I have to say, because they said I could say this, right? Their 90s and beyond, that what an inspiration to all of us to say, you know what, it's worth it to preserve these stories, and then not just preserve them, but to tell the stories. And y'all, we need help. You know, I will not be bashful about that. We couldn't do it. It takes a village of all of these folks behind us, and Deborah Robbins from Mercer University, and Hannah Doan from Wesleyan College, and where's Tina? Tina Calhoun, who produced all of those videos. Aren't they amazing? Yes, fantastic. But indeed, it does take all of us to fulfill the original vision of Mrs. Carter. And I told Nancy Anderson, I said, wow, what a full circle moment for you. Because Nancy was one of the first planning committee, and Valeria Murphy, that they are here to see what has happened because of their work and the foundation that they laid for all of us. You all help us do that, would you? Let's not make this an annual event where you come, and I hope you do, by the way. Please do. But please don't let it end there. Let's do something, as Mrs. Carter said, to bring not only peace to this world, beautiful Carla, by the way, where's Carla? Oh my God, that was so beautiful. But also to say, you know what, in her very simple but profound words, I'm going to challenge all of us as we leave today. Just do something. The little things and the bigger things, to care about other people. And as she said, and we all know, we promise this world will be better for it. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you have enjoyed this ceremony and have been inspired by the stories of these women. Now let's go forward and bring beauty and peace and joy to this world. We're dismissed. Yeah. If you are a family member, we're going to do photos, so y'all stay. The families, if you'll stay. Yes. So we'll start. Let's grab him, and we'll start with a pass photo. Hey, Tina. Tina.